Chapter 1. The wrong number. Bruises on her mama's face had turned the color of rotting plums. Lily sat curled in the corner of the bathroom, her small body wedged between the toilet and the wall, fingers trembling as she clutched the phone she'd stolen from her mother's purse. 8 years old, and she already knew the sound that came before the hitting, the low rumble in his voice. Like thunder gathering before a storm. Tonight, it had started over. Burned toast? She could hear them through the thin apartment walls. His shouting, her mother's pleading, the crash of something heavy, maybe the lamp, maybe the chair. Lily squeezed her eyes shut and tried to remember the numbers her teacher had shown them in school. 911, emergency. But last time she'd called, he'd found out, and Mama had 3 broken ribs. After that, her fingers moved across the cracked screen, searching through her mother's contacts. There had to be someone, anyone. Her grandmother was dead. Her aunt had stopped answering calls 2 years ago. The neighbors pretended not to hear. She found a number saved under a single initial. V. Mama had never mentioned a V. But desperation made children brave, or maybe just reckless. Lily's thumbs flew across the keyboard, tears blurring her vision. He's beating my mama again. Please help us. We're at Riverside Apartments, Building C, Apartment 7. Please hit send before she could think better of it. The phone felt hot in her hands. She waited, counting her heartbeats, listening to the terrible sounds from the living room. Her mother had gone quiet now, which was somehow worse than the screaming. The phone buzzed. Address confirmed. I'm on my way. Lock yourself in a room with your mother if you can. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Lily stared at the message. The words were formal, almost cold, but there was something absolute in them. A promise carved in stone. Another buzz. What's your name, little one? Her fingers shook as she typed back. Lily, I'm 8. He has a gun. The response came instantly. Lily, I need you to be very brave for just a little while longer. Can you do that for me? She typed yes, though she didn't feel brave at all. Good girl. I'll be there in 4 minutes. When I knock 3 times slowly, that's how you'll know it's me. No one else. Lily clutched the phone to her chest and prayed to a god she wasn't sure existed anymore. Vincent Thorne had been in the middle of a house council meeting when the message arrived. The phone in his jacket pocket should have been silent. He'd enabled every privacy setting modern technology offered. But this number was different. It was the one he'd given to Elena Reyes 3 months ago, after he'd found her bleeding in an alley behind a bar, victim of a rogue vampire who'd broken the first law. No feeding without consent. He'd killed the rogue. He'd healed Elena. He'd given her his number and told her to call if she ever needed protection. She'd never called, but someone had texted. Vincent's second in command, Marcus, stopped mid-sentence as Vincent rose from his seat at the obsidian table. My lord? Emergency. Vincent was already moving toward the door, his long coat billowing behind him like wings. Reschedule the vote. He didn't wait for acknowledgement. The council chamber of House Thorne sat deep beneath the city, in catacombs that predated the human settlement above by centuries. Vincent took the stairs 3 at a time, his preternatural speed making him a blur even to the vampire guards stationed at each landing. The message had included an address. Riverside Apartments. Building C. He knew the area. Human district, low income, high crime. The kind of place where screams went unanswered and police rarely came. For minutes. He'd promised for minutes. Vincent emerged from the underground entrance into a night thick with autumn rain. The city sprawled before him, its lights reflecting off wet pavement like scattered diamonds. He could have called his driver, but that would take too long. Instead, he ran. To human eyes, he would have been invisible, just a cold wind, a shadow that moved wrong. He cleared 6 blocks in under a minute, his mind already calculating variables. A child, a gun, a man who beat women. The familiar anger rose in his chest, ancient and cold. Vincent had been walking the earth for 347 years, and in all that time, certain things never changed. Predators always found prey. The weak always suffered under the strong, unless someone stronger intervened. He found Building C easily, a squat, crumbling structure with broken security doors and garbage piled in the entryway. Apartment 7 was on the 2nd floor. Vincent could hear the heartbeats before he reached the landing, one fast and thready with fear, one slower and weak, one elevated with rage and alcohol. He could smell the blood too, fresh, female. The door was flimsy. He could have torn it off its hinges. But the child had said the man had a gun, and Vincent preferred precision over spectacle. He knocked 3 times, slowly, exactly as he'd promised. Inside, the shouting stopped. Vincent waited, utterly still, as footsteps approached the door. Heavy boots. The man. Who the hell? The door swung open, and Vincent smiled. It was not a kind smile. Good evening, Vincent said quietly, his eyes meeting the bloodshot gaze of the man before him. I believe you've been expecting me. Chapter 2. The monster in the doorway. The man in the doorway was tall, broad-shouldered, with a wife beater stained with beer and what looked like marinara sauce. His face was flushed red, eyes glazed with the particular fury of a drunk who'd been interrupted mid-rampage. I don't know you, he slurred, swaying slightly. Get lost before I. Vincent moved. One moment he stood in the hallway, the next his hand was wrapped around the man's throat, lifting him off his feet with impossible ease. The man's eyes bulged, his hands clawing uselessly at Vincent's grip. Before you what? Vincent's voice was silk over steel. Before you hit another woman? Before you terrorize another child? He carried the struggling man backward into the apartment, kicking the door shut behind him. The living room was exactly what he'd expected: chaos and poverty and violence made manifest. Overturned furniture, broken glass, a lamp shattered on the floor, and there, huddled against the wall near the kitchen, was Elena. Vincent's jaw tightened. Her lip was split, bleeding freely. One eye was swelling shut. She held her ribs carefully, protectively, and even from across the room he could hear the ragged quality of her breathing. Vincent? Her voice was barely a whisper, thick with shock and pain. He didn't answer. Couldn't, not yet, not while rage burned so cold in his veins it felt like ice in his blood. The man in his grip had started turning purple. Please, Elena gasped. Don't, she's watching. That made Vincent pause. He turned his head fractionally and saw her then, a small girl with dark braids and enormous brown eyes, peering around the bathroom doorframe. She held a phone in both hands like a talisman. Lily. Vincent lowered the man slowly, deliberately, until his boots touched the ground. But he didn't release his throat. Listen carefully, Vincent said, his voice dropping to a register that bypassed conscious thought and spoke directly to the primal brain. Compulsion, the second gift of his bloodline, and one he rarely used. You're going to walk out of this apartment. You're going to walk until you reach the police station on 5th Street. You're going to confess to every crime you've committed in the last 5 years. Domestic violence, assault, whatever else you've done that you've been running from. You won't remember me. You won't remember tonight. You'll only remember that you need to turn yourself in. Do you understand? The man nodded weakly, something glazed and distant entering his eyes. Vincent released him. The man stumbled toward the door, moving like a sleepwalker, and disappeared into the hallway without a backward glance. The apartment fell silent except for Elena's labored breathing. Vincent stood very still, forcing his features back into something approaching human. His eyes, he knew, had gone fully black, pupils blown wide enough to swallow the iris, a tell that always emerged when his nature rose too close to the surface. He blinked hard, willing them back to their usual dark brown. Mama? Lily's small voice broke the silence. Elena tried to straighten, winced, and gave up. It's okay, baby. This is a friend. The one I told you about. Vincent seriously doubted Elena had told her daughter about the vampire who'd saved her from being drained dry in an alley. But he appreciated the diplomatic fiction. He crossed to Elena in 3 long strides, kneeling beside her with preternatural grace. Up close, the damage was worse. The split lip was nothing. He could smell the internal bleeding. Broken ribs, certainly. Possibly a ruptured spleen. I need to examine you, he said quietly. May I? She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. Vincent's hands were gentle as he probed her ribs, her abdomen. She hissed in pain when he pressed just below her diaphragm. Spleen, he confirmed. You need a hospital. Can't afford, I'll handle it. He was already pulling out his phone, texting Marcus with rapid efficiency. Medical team to Riverside Apartments. Building C. Apartment 7. Human female. Internal bleeding. Discreet. Now. The response came in seconds. Dispatched. ETA. 6 minutes. Vincent pocketed his phone and finally allowed himself to look at the small girl still hovering in the bathroom doorway. She was thin, underfed, with the kind of watchful wariness that children learned when they had to become their own protectors too young. You were very brave tonight, Lily, he said, keeping his voice soft. Your mother is going to be fine. Are you a policeman? She took one small step forward, curious, overcoming fear. No, superhero? Despite everything, Vincent's lips twitched. Something like that. Lily considered this, her young mind working through possibilities with admirable logic. You're really strong, and really fast. I saw how fast you moved. Perceptive child. Dangerously so. I've had a lot of practice, Vincent said carefully. Elena reached out with a trembling hand, touching Vincent's sleeve. Thank you. I never would have called, but Lily found your number, and hush. Vincent covered her hand with his own, careful of his strength. You should have called. That's why I gave you this number. I was afraid, Elena whispered. Afraid he'd find out. She glanced at Lily, unable to finish the sentence. Vincent understood. The mathematics of domestic violence were brutally simple. Leaving was the most dangerous moment. Calling for help could trigger an escalation. Women calculated these risks every day, trying to keep themselves and their children alive. He won't touch you again, Vincent said, and it was a promise carved from the same stone as his immortal bones. The compulsion will hold. He'll confess, he'll be arrested, and you'll be safe. Compulsion? Elena's eyes widened. You mean you? She stopped, awareness dawning. Vincent watched her put together pieces she'd deliberately avoided examining 3 months ago. The impossible speed, the strength, the way he'd healed her broken arm with nothing but his blood and a whispered word. Yes, Vincent said simply. I am exactly what you're thinking. Lily had crept closer now, standing just behind her mother. What's he talking about, Mama? Elena opened her mouth, closed it, looked helplessly at Vincent. He turned to face the child fully, meeting her curious gaze with calm certainty. I'm a vampire, Lily, he said. Chapter 3. The Truth in Shadows. Lily stared at him for a long moment, her small face utterly serious. Then she said, like in the movies? Not quite, Vincent replied, choosing his words with care. I don't burst into flames in sunlight, though it's extremely unpleasant. I don't sleep in a coffin. And I absolutely do not sparkle. A tiny smile flickered across Lily's face, there and gone like a candle in wind. Elena made a small, pained sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. This is insane. Lily, baby, you shouldn't. She texted me for help, Vincent interrupted gently. She deserves honesty at least. He kept his gaze on the child. I drink blood to survive, yes, but only from those who consent to give it. I'm very old, very strong, and very hard to kill. And I promise you, on everything I am, that I will never hurt you or your mother. Lily processed this with the remarkable adaptability of children. How old? 347 years. Her eyes went wide. That's older than America. By a few decades, yes. Do you know other vampires? Many. I lead a house, a family of sorts. We have laws, structure, territories. Like the mafia? Lily's frame of reference was clearly derived from television. More like very old nobility with extremely strict rules about not eating the neighbors. This time Elena definitely laughed, though she clutched her ribs immediately after. God, this is Vincent. I don't know what to. The sound of footsteps on the stairs cut her off. Vincent rose in one fluid motion, positioning himself between the door and the two humans. His nostrils flared, analyzing scents. It's my medical team, he said, relaxing fractionally. They're human, discreet, and very well paid to ask no questions. 3 sharp knocks sounded a professional cadence. Vincent opened the door to reveal a woman in her 50s carrying a large medical kit and a younger man pushing a wheelchair. Both wore the neutral, efficient expressions of people who'd seen everything and were surprised by nothing. Dr. Sarah Chen, the woman said briskly, already moving toward Elena. Let's see what we're dealing with. The young man, presumably a nurse or aide, began setting up equipment with practiced ease. Vincent stepped back, giving them room, and found Lily had gravitated to his side like a small satellite. Will Mama be okay? She whispered. Dr. Chen is the best trauma surgeon in the city, Vincent assured her. Your mother is in excellent hands. They watched as Dr. Chen performed a rapid assessment, her fingers probing Elena's abdomen with professional gentleness. She pulled out a portable ultrasound, squirted gel, and ran the wand across Elena's bruised skin. Grade 2 splenic laceration, Dr. Chen announced. Stable for now, but she needs hospital monitoring. 3 fractured ribs, 1 displaced. No pneumothorax, thankfully. She looked up at Vincent. St. Michael's or your facility? My facility, Vincent said immediately. St. Michael's would require police reports, questions, bureaucracy that could endanger Elena if the compulsion on her abuser somehow failed. Mama has to go to the hospital? Lily's voice had gone small and frightened. Elena reached for her daughter's hand. Just for a little while, baby. Just to make sure I heal right. Our facility is very comfortable, doctor, Chen said, her voice warming as she addressed the child. We have excellent food, soft beds, and the best cable television package in the state. Can I come with her? Lily asked, looking between Vincent and the doctor. Doctor. Chen glanced at Vincent, deferring to his authority. Vincent crouched down to Lily's eye level. Of course you can. You'll stay in the room with your mother the entire time. No one will separate you. Promise? On my honor. Lily studied his face with unnerving intensity, as if trying to read truth in the angles of his bones. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because, she nodded solemnly. The aide brought the wheelchair closer. Doctor. Chen and Vincent carefully transferred Elena into it. Her sharp intake of breath, the only sound she allowed herself. Lily immediately moved to her mother's side, one small hand gripping the wheelchair's armrest. I'll need to pack some things, Elena said weakly. Clothes for Lily, my medications, tell me where I'll get them. The aide offered. As Elena directed him through the apartment, Vincent pulled Dr. Chen aside. How bad is it really? The surgeon's professional mask slipped for a moment, revealing anger underneath. Bad enough. Another few hours and that spleen might have ruptured completely. She'd have bled out internally. Her eyes cut to where Lily stood guard over her mother. That child saved her life tonight. She's resourceful, Vincent agreed. She's traumatized, Dr. Chen corrected sharply. I'll have our counselor on standby. The mother will need psychological support too, once she's physically stable, Vincent nodded. His facility, a private medical center housed in one of House Thorne's legitimate business holdings, employed a full staff trained to handle victims of violence. Many were survivors themselves. It was one of several humanitarian projects Vincent maintained, partly from genuine compassion and partly from pragmatic necessity. Helping humans built goodwill, and goodwill made it easier for vampires to exist undetected in a modern world. The aide returned with a hastily packed duffel bag. Ready when you are. They made a strange procession through the building, a vampire lord, a trauma surgeon, a medical aide, and a broken family. The few neighbors who peered out their doors quickly retreated. Vincent's presence had that effect. Some primal part of the human brain recognized a predator when it walked past. His car waited outside, a black Mercedes with tinted windows. The driver, another vampire, one of his personal guard, opened the doors without comment. They settled Elena and Lily in the back seat, Dr. Chen beside them. Vincent took the front passenger seat, the facility, he told the driver quietly. Priority route. As they pulled away from Riverside Apartments, Vincent caught Lily's reflection in the side mirror. She was staring out the window at the city lights, her young face pensive. Mr. Vincent? Her voice was barely audible over the engine's purr. Yes, Lily? If you're a vampire king, does that mean there are vampire queens too? Vincent's lips curved slightly. Not in my house. Though there are other houses led by women. Very powerful women, and they all follow rules? About not hurting people? Her question cut to the heart of things with a child's clarity. Most do, Vincent said honestly. But not all. That's why houses like mine exist, to enforce the laws, to protect both vampires and humans, like police, Lily said thoughtfully. But for monsters, exactly like that. She fell silent for a moment then. Am I going to become a vampire now? Since I met you? Elena made a distressed sound. No, Vincent said firmly. Vampirism requires an exchange of blood, a ritual, and consent. You're perfectly safe, Lily. I promise. The child seemed to accept this. She leaned against her mother, exhaustion finally claiming her. And within minutes her breathing had evened into sleep. Dr. Chen caught Vincent's eye in the rearview mirror and mouthed. Remarkable child. Vincent nodded slowly, watching the city scroll past. Remarkable indeed, and far too perceptive for comfort. Chapter 4. Sanctuary behind glass. The Thorne Medical Facility occupied 3 floors of what appeared to be an upscale corporate building in the financial district. No signs advertised its purpose. No emergency vehicles cluttered its underground entrance. To passers-by, it looked like just another office building. Dark and empty after business hours, Vincent led them through a private elevator that descended rather than rose, taking them deep beneath street level, where the facility's true heart lay. The doors opened onto a reception area that resembled a luxury hotel more than a hospital. Soft lighting, abstract art on the walls, the faint scent of lavender in the air. A night nurse looked up from her station, her expression carefully neutral. Lord Thorne, Dr. Chen, we have the Magnolia Suite prepared as requested. Magnolia Suite? Elena echoed weakly from her wheelchair. All our rooms are named after flowers, the nurse explained with a gentle smile. We find it more calming than numbers. They moved through hallways lined with warm wood paneling and more art. Vincent noted Elena's growing tension, the way her eyes darted around as if searching for exits or threats. This doesn't look like any hospital I've ever seen, she said. That's intentional, Vincent replied. This facility serves a specific population, those who need medical care but can't access traditional hospitals safely. Undocumented immigrants, domestic violence survivors, people fleeing dangerous situations. We provide treatment without requiring insurance, identification, or police reports. That must cost a fortune. House Thorne has resources to spare. The Magnolia Suite was actually a small apartment, a hospital bed in the main room. Yes, but also a comfortable sofa, a kitchenette, a private bathroom, and a separate sleeping nook with a twin bed, clearly meant for family members. Floor-to-ceiling windows line one wall, though they showed only darkness beyond. Lily had woken during the elevator ride, and now she moved to the windows, pressing her nose against the glass. Why is it so dark out there? We're underground, Vincent explained. Those windows face an interior courtyard. During the day, special lights simulate sunshine, and there's a garden. You'll see it tomorrow, Doctor. Chen was already helping Elena onto the hospital bed, efficiently hooking her up to monitors. The machines came to life with soft beeps and glowing numbers. Vitals are stable, Doctor, Chen announced. I'm starting in 4 with fluids and pain medication. You'll feel better soon, Elena. How long do I have to stay here? Elena asked, wincing as the needle entered her arm. 72 hours minimum for observation. Possibly longer, depending on how that spleen behaves, Doctor. Chen's tone left no room for argument. You'll have nursing care around the clock, and I'll check on you every 6 hours personally. Lily had abandoned the windows, and now stood beside the bed, gripping her mother's free hand. I'm staying too. Of course you are, baby. Elena's eyes were already growing heavy from the medication. Vincent promised. Doctor. Chen glanced at Vincent. There's a children's meal menu in the kitchenette. The nurse can bring anything she wants. Breakfast is served at 8, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. The television has every streaming service known to humanity. I'm not hungry, Lily said, though her stomach audibly contradicted her. Vincent caught the nurse's attention. Perhaps some soup? And milk? The nurse nodded and disappeared with quiet efficiency. Doctor. Chen finished her examination, made notations on a tablet, and addressed Elena directly. You're going to sleep now. The medication will see to that. When you wake, the pain will be much more manageable. Don't try to get up without assistance. The bathroom has an emergency call button. Use it. Elena's eyes were already closing. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Within moments, her breathing had evened into medicated sleep. Lily stood perfectly still beside the bed, her small face exhausted but vigilant. Vincent recognized the look. She was fighting sleep, afraid something terrible would happen if she stopped watching. Your mother is safe here, he said quietly. I give you my word. You keep saying that. Giving your word. Lily looked up at him with those two old eyes. Does that mean something special? Because you're a vampire? Vincent considered how to explain the weight of oaths to a child. Among my kind, our word is binding. We can't lie when we make a formal promise. It's built into our nature. Break an oath and we suffer physical consequences. Like what? Pain, weakness, in extreme cases, death. He watched understanding dawn on her face. So when I promise you something, Lily, I'm not just making sounds with my mouth. I'm binding myself with magic older than the city. She absorbed this silently. The nurse returned with a tray: tomato soup, crackers, a glass of milk, and a small plate of cookies. She set it on the side table and retreated without a word. You should eat, Vincent said gently. I'm not Lily. He made his voice firm but not unkind. You've been very brave tonight. Impossibly brave. But your mother needs you to stay strong. which means you need to eat and rest. Can you do that? She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. She climbed onto the sofa and pulled the tray onto her lap, eating mechanically, her eyes never leaving her mother's sleeping form. Vincent settled into a chair by the window, content to wait. He pulled out his phone and found 17 messages from Marcus, each progressively more urgent. The House Council wanted answers. There were votes pending, alliances to negotiate, territory disputes that required his attention. He ignored all of it. Instead, he composed a single message: family emergency. Resume normal operations. I'll return when I'm able. Marcus's response was immediate. My lord, the House requires the House will manage for a few days. You have full authority in my absence. A longer pause then, as you wish. Is everything all right? Vincent glanced at Lily at Elena, sleeping peacefully for perhaps the first time in years. At the fragile safety he'd carved out for them in this underground sanctuary. It will be. He replied. He pocketed the phone and looked up to find Lily watching him. Soup spoon halfway to her mouth. Do you have to go? She asked. Not if you don't want me to. She considered this carefully. Mama might be scared if she wakes up and we're alone. Then I'll stay. Lily finished her soup in silence. When the nurse returned to clear the tray, she also brought a soft blanket and a stuffed rabbit from somewhere in the facility's apparently endless supplies. For you, sweetheart, the nurse said, tucking the rabbit into Lily's arms. He helps children feel safe. His name is Mr. Hopper. Lily accepted the rabbit with solemn gratitude, her defenses finally cracking. She curled up on the sofa with the blanket and Mr. Hopper, her eyelids drooping despite her best efforts. Mr. Vincent? Her voice was sleepy, slurring at the edges. Will you still be here when I wake up? Vincent looked at this small, brave child who'd saved her mother's life by texting a vampire she'd never met, who'd faced down her terror and asked for help from a monster. Because monsters were sometimes better than the humans who should have protected her. I'll be here, he promised. And felt the oath settle into his bones like iron. Lily smiled, just slightly, and let sleep finally claim her. Vincent sat in the quiet room, listening to two heartbeats, one strong and steady, one slow and healing. Outside, his house was managing without him. His council was debating policies he'd written. His territory was secure, and he was exactly where he needed to be. Chapter 5. Dawn and Questions. Vincent didn't sleep. He never did, not in the traditional human sense. Instead, he entered a state of deep rest. As dawn approached, consciousness dimmed but not extinguished, awareness stretched thin but present. It was a vulnerable state, which was why most vampires retreated to secured locations during daylight hours, but he'd given his word. So he remained in the chair by the window, watching the artificial lights in the courtyard brighten gradually, simulating sunrise. The garden beyond the glass came into focus: roses, jasmine, a small fountain, all maintained underground for patients who needed to heal away from the world above. Elena stirred first, around 7:30. Her eyes opened slowly, confusion giving way to memory. Then relief when she saw Lily sleeping peacefully on the sofa. You stayed, she whispered, her gaze finding Vincent in his chair. I promised Lily I would. Elena tried to sit up, gasped at the pain, and fell back against her pillows. The monitors beeped frantically until she stilled. Easy, Vincent said, rising to adjust her bed so she could recline at an angle without straining. You fractured 3 ribs. Moving will hurt for several weeks. Weeks, Elena's voice cracked. I can't afford to miss weeks of work. I'll lose my job at the diner, and then we'll lose the apartment. And breathe, Vincent interrupted gently. Your job is secure. I had my assistant call your employer last night and explain you're recovering from a medical emergency. You'll receive full pay during your absence, plus a bonus for the inconvenience. Elena stared at him. You can't just. How did you even? I can. And I did. He returned to his chair, careful to maintain a non-threatening distance. The apartment is also secure. Your rent is paid through the end of the year. Your abuser confessed to multiple counts of domestic violence early this morning and is currently in custody awaiting arraignment. He won't make bail. Tears slid down Elena's cheeks. Why are you doing this? I'm nobody. Just a waitress with a kid and terrible taste in men. Vincent was quiet for a moment, choosing his words with care. 3 months ago, I found you in an alley. You were dying. You'd been attacked by one of my kind who'd broken our most sacred law. I failed you that night, failed to prevent the attack, failed to keep you safe in territory under my protection. That wasn't your fault, it was precisely my fault. I am responsible for every vampire in this city. Their crimes are my crimes. He met her eyes steadily. I gave you my number because I owed you a debt. Your daughter called in that debt. I'm simply paying what I owe. By completely appending your life, Marcus, that's your second, right? He seemed pretty unhappy about you leaving. Vincent's lips curved slightly. Marcus is always unhappy when I make decisions he considers sentimental. He'll survive. Elena studied him with an intensity that reminded him of Lily. You're not what I expected a vampire to be. What did you expect? I don't know. Colder, crueler, more. She gestured vaguely. Monster-like. I am 347 years old, Elena. I've been many things: soldier, scholar, monster, savior. I've killed more people than you've met in your entire life. I've watched empires rise and fall, seen plagues sweep through cities like fire through dry grass. He leaned forward slightly. But I've also learned that cruelty for its own sake is boring, pointless. There's no artistry in it, no challenge. Protecting the vulnerable, enforcing laws that prevent chaos that requires actual effort, actual thought. So you're saying you're good because being evil is too easy? I'm saying I'm functional because I found purpose beyond simple survival. Vincent glanced at Lily, still sleeping peacefully. Your daughter texted a stranger and begged for help. She had no idea if I'd answer, if I'd care, if I was even human. But she tried anyway. That kind of courage deserves to be rewarded, not exploited. Elena was crying openly now, silent tears that spoke of relief and exhaustion and terror finally released. I should have left him years ago. I should have protected her better. I should have. You survived, Vincent interrupted firmly. You kept your daughter alive in an impossible situation. You did what you had to do. There's no shame in that. A soft sound from the sofa drew their attention. Lily was waking, stretching carefully. Mr. Hopper still clutched in her arms. Her eyes found her mother first, then Vincent, and visible relief flooded her small face. Mama's okay? She asked, climbing off the sofa. Mama's okay, baby. Come here. Lily scrambled onto the bed, careful to avoid the 4 lines, and burrowed into her mother's side. Elena wrapped her free arm around her daughter and held on like Lily was the only thing keeping her anchored to earth. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. The nurse entered carrying a breakfast tray: oatmeal, fruit, orange juice, coffee for Elena. Behind her came Dr. Chen, tablet in hand, already reviewing overnight data. Good morning, the doctor said briskly. How's the pain, Elena? Manageable. The medication helps. Dr. Chen performed a quick examination, probing Elena's abdomen with practiced efficiency. Swelling's down slightly. That's good. We'll do another ultrasound this afternoon to check the spleen. She made notes on her tablet. You can have solid foods today, nothing heavy. The kitchenette is stocked, and the nurse can bring meals on request. Lily had gravitated to the breakfast tray, eyeing the fruit with obvious interest. Vincent caught the nurse's attention and gestured subtly. She nodded and disappeared, returning minutes later with a child-sized breakfast: pancakes, strawberries, milk. Thank you, Lily said solemnly, accepting the plate. Dr. Chen finished her examination and turned to Vincent. A word, my lord? They stepped into the hallway, leaving Elena and Lily to their breakfast. Dr. Chen pulled up data on her tablet, her expression grave. The physical damage will heal, she said quietly. But I'm concerned about the psychological trauma, particularly for the child. I'd like to have our counselor speak with them both. Agreed. Whatever they need. There's another issue. Dr. Chen hesitated, unusual for her. I ran a full blood panel on Elena last night. She's severely anemic, vitamin deficient, and showing signs of chronic stress-related illness. This didn't start with one beating, Vincent. This has been ongoing for years. Vincent's jaw tightened. How long do you estimate? At least 3 years of sustained abuse. Possibly longer. Dr. Chen's eyes were hard. That child has been living in a war zone her entire conscious life. Can it be reversed? The physical damage? With proper nutrition, rest, and safety. Yes. The psychological damage will take longer, but they can heal. She paused. Provided they have stability, a safe environment, resources. Vincent looked through the doorway at Elena and Lily, at this small, broken family eating breakfast in an underground sanctuary. He thought about his house, his responsibilities. The careful balance he maintained between vampire politics and human welfare. He thought about a child brave enough to text a stranger for help. They'll have it, he said quietly. Whatever they need, for as long as they need it, Doctor. Chen studied his face for a long moment. You're getting attached. I'm fulfilling an obligation. Vincent, she used his given name, a liberty she'd earned over 15 years of service. I've known you long enough to recognize when you're lying to yourself. He didn't answer, because she was right, and that, he reflected, was going to complicate everything. Chapter 6. Threads of Blood and Trust. The counselor arrived after lunch, a woman in her early 60s with kind eyes and an unhurried manner. Her name was Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, and she carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who'd spent decades listening to terrible truths without flinching. Vincent excused himself to give them privacy, though he remained just outside the suite, close enough to intervene if needed. Through the door, he could hear Dr. Okonkwo's gentle questions, Lily's careful answers, Elena's occasional sob. He pulled out his phone and found another barrage of messages from Marcus. The House Council was growing restless. There were decisions that required his direct authority: a proposed alliance with House Mercier in Boston, a territorial dispute with the Rogue Nest in the Warehouse District, a formal complaint from House Zhao about one of Vincent's vampires feeding too close to their border. Vincent handled each issue with terse efficiency. His responses, stripped of the diplomatic nuance he usually employed. Marcus would smooth the ruffled feathers later. Right now, Vincent's attention was elsewhere. An hour passed before Dr. Okonkwo emerged, closing the door quietly behind her. How are they? Vincent asked. Fragile, traumatized, but resilient. The counselor met his eyes directly. That child has been parentified, forced to become the adult in the relationship, managing her mother's emotions and her abuser's violence. She'll need extensive therapy to reclaim her childhood. She'll have it. And Elena needs treatment for complex PTSD, anxiety, and depression. The physical healing is the easy part, Lord Thorne. The psychological work will take years. Vincent nodded slowly. Can it be done here? At this facility? For now, yes. But eventually they'll need to reintegrate into normal life. They'll need a safe home, community support, financial stability. I'll provide it, Doctor. Okonkwo tilted her head, studying him with professional curiosity. Forgive my directness, but you seem unusually invested in these particular patients. We serve dozens of families in crisis. You don't typically involve yourself so personally. This is different. How? Vincent considered his answer carefully. The child contacted me directly. She asked for help when she had no reason to believe I'd answer. That kind of trust, however desperate, creates an obligation. An obligation, Doctor. Okonkwo's tone was skeptical. Or something else. Before Vincent could respond, the suite door opened. Lily stood in the doorway. Mr. Hopper under one arm. Mama's sleeping again, she said. Doctor. Okonkwo said I should let her rest. Can I talk to you? Vincent glanced at the counselor, who nodded permission and excused herself quietly. Lily led him to the courtyard garden, visible through a set of glass doors Vincent hadn't noticed before. The underground space was surprisingly large, perhaps 30 feet across, with real soil, real plants, and those artificial lights that somehow convinced the greenery it was growing under open sky. Lily sat on a stone bench near the fountain, and Vincent settled beside her, careful to leave space between them. Doctor. Okonkwo says we're safe now, Lily began, her voice small. She says he can't hurt us anymore, but I keep thinking he'll find a way. He always did before. The compulsion I placed on him is absolute, Vincent said. He cannot physically seek you out. His mind won't allow it. And even if it somehow failed, he's in jail. He won't make bail. He'll be convicted and sentenced to years in prison. But someday he'll get out, perhaps. By then, you and your mother will be somewhere he can never find you. New city, new names, if necessary, new life. Vincent turned to face her directly. I won't let him hurt you again, Lily. I promise you that. She picked at Mr. Hopper's worn ear, thinking. Doctor. Okonkwo asked me if I was scared of you. Because you're a vampire. Are you? A little, she admitted. But not like I was scared of him. You're scary like a big dog is scary. You could hurt me, but you won't. He was scary like something that enjoyed hurting. The distinction was uncomfortably perceptive. You're right to be cautious, Vincent said. I am dangerous. All vampires are. We're predators by nature, designed to hunt and kill. The fact that I choose not to doesn't change what I am. But you do choose, Lily said. That's what matters, right? Choosing to be good even when you could be bad. Moral philosophy from an 8-year-old. You're full of surprises. She smiled slightly, then grew serious again. Can I ask you something? About vampire stuff? Of course. You said you drink blood. Does it hurt? The person you drink from? Vincent considered how to explain this to a child. It can, if done violently. But among civilized vampires, feeding is consensual and controlled. We have donors, humans who volunteer. We can release endorphins during feeding that make the experience pleasurable rather than painful. So it's like giving blood at the hospital? But it feels good? Similar, yes. Though we don't require nearly as much blood as humans assume. A pint every few days is sufficient for most of us. Lily absorbed this, her young mind working through implications. The vampire who attacked Mama 3 months ago, he wasn't civilized? He was rogue, exiled from his house for breaking laws. He fed without permission, violently. I executed him for it. Good, Lily said, with startling vehemence. He deserved it. Vincent didn't argue. By vampire law, by human law, by any measure of justice, the rogue had indeed deserved death. They sat in silence for a moment, watching water trickle from the fountain. Then Lily asked, Do you have a family? Besides your house? No, I was turned during a war, 3 centuries ago. Everyone I knew as a human is long dead. Do you get lonely? The question hit harder than Vincent expected. Sometimes, he admitted, though I've learned to manage solitude. That's sad. Lily looked up at him with those two old eyes. Everyone should have someone who cares about them. Before Vincent could respond, his phone vibrated urgently. He glanced at the screen and saw Marcus's name, followed by a single word in all caps, emergency. He answered immediately. What's wrong? Marcus's voice was tight with tension. House Corvus knows about the humans. They're demanding you turn them over. Vincent went very still. Explain. Someone saw you bring them to the facility. Word reached Corvus within hours. They're claiming the woman is a security risk. She knows too much about our operations, about you specifically. They're invoking the witness protocol. The witness protocol. An ancient law designed to protect vampire society from exposure. Any human who learned too much about their world could be eliminated, relocated with compelled amnesia, or brought fully into vampire service as a thrall. Who authorized this action? Vincent's voice had gone cold. Dangerous. Lord Corvus himself. He's called an emergency tribunal. You have to appear before the Grand Council at midnight, or they'll send enforcers to collect the witnesses themselves. Vincent looked at Lily, at this brave, broken child who'd asked him for help and received instead a cascade of vampire politics that could get her and her mother killed or worse. Tell Lord Corvus I'll be there, Vincent said quietly. And Marcus? Prepare our house for potential conflict. If Corvus wants these humans, he'll have to go through me to get them. He ended the call and found Lily watching him with concern. Something's wrong, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Vincent admitted. Something's wrong, but I'm going to fix it. Promise? He looked at this child who still believed promises meant something, who still had faith that adults could make things right. I promise, he said, and felt the oath settle into his bones like chains. Chapter 7. The Grand Council's demand. Vincent left the facility at 11, giving himself an hour to prepare. He'd explained to Elena, who'd woken pale and frightened when he'd returned to the suite, that there were complications, that other vampires had learned of their existence, that he would handle it. He hadn't told her about the witness protocol, about the very real possibility that the Grand Council might order her death or permanent enslavement. Some truths were too heavy to share with someone still healing from broken ribs and a lifetime of violence. Lily had gripped his hand when he'd said goodbye, her small fingers surprisingly strong. You'll come back? She'd asked. I'll come back, he'd promised. Now he stood in the antechamber of the Grand Council Hall, deep beneath the city, in catacombs that predated human settlement. The space was deliberately intimidating, vaulted ceilings lost in shadow, walls carved from living rock, torches that burned with cold blue flame. Marcus appeared at his side, dressed in formal house attire, black suit, silver insignia of House Thorne at his throat. Status? Vincent asked quietly. Lord Corvus arrived an hour ago with his full retinue. He's brought Lady Zhao and Lord Mercier to his side. They have the votes. To do what? To invoke protocol. To demand you surrender the witnesses for interrogation and disposal. Marcus's jaw tightened. Vincent, if you fight this, you'll be breaking council law. They could strip you of your territory, your house, everything you've built. Then they'll have to strip me, for two humans you barely know. Vincent turned to face his second directly. For a child who asked me for help, and a woman I failed to protect 3 months ago. Yes, Marcus. For them. Marcus studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then House Thorne stands with you, all of us. If this goes to war, we'll be ready. The heavy bronze doors to the council chamber swung open. A voice echoed from within. Lord Vincent Thorne of House Thorne. You are summoned. Vincent straightened his shoulders and walked through the doors. The grand council chamber was circular, ringed with 7 thrones, representing the 7 great houses of the city. Only 3 were currently occupied: Lord Corvus, a sharp-featured vampire with silver hair and cruel eyes; Lady Zhao, ancient and inscrutable; and Lord Mercier, young by vampire standards, but dangerously ambitious. The other 4 thrones stood empty. The remaining houses had chosen not to attend. A calculated neutrality that spoke volumes. Vincent took his position in the center of the chamber, standing in a circle of torchlight, while shadows pressed in from all sides. Lord Thorne, Corvus began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. You stand accused of harboring human witnesses in violation of the secrecy accords. How do you answer? I acknowledge that to humans in my care possess knowledge of our kind, Vincent replied evenly. I dispute that this constitutes a violation. They saw you use supernatural speed and strength, Corvus continued. They heard you identify yourself as a vampire. One is a child, unpredictable and uncontrollable. The other is a traumatized woman with no loyalty to our kind. Either could expose us at any moment. They won't. You cannot know that. Lady Zhao's voice was like wind through dead leaves. Human minds are fragile. Memories resurface. Secrets slip out. We have maintained our existence for millennia through absolute discretion. Your sentimentality threatens us all. My sentimentality, Vincent said with careful precision, saved 2 lives that were in immediate danger. The child contacted me for help. I responded. By our own laws, that creates a bond of protection. A bond you chose to honor, Lord Mercier interjected. You could have compelled them to forget. You could have relocated them outside our territory. Instead, you brought them directly into a facility that houses our medical operations, exposing them to dozens of our people, our systems, our secrets. Vincent couldn't deny that. It had been a calculated risk, one he'd taken knowing it might lead to exactly this confrontation. The witness protocol is clear, Corvus said, rising from his throne. Humans who learn our nature must be handled according to established procedures: compelled amnesia and relocation, binding into thrall service, or elimination. You will surrender these witnesses to council authority for appropriate processing. No, the word echoed through the chamber. Corvus's eyes narrowed. You refuse a direct order from this council? I refuse an unjust application of an archaic law. The witness protocol was designed for security breaches, careless vampires who expose themselves through negligence or malice. It was never intended to punish victims of violence who sought help in desperation. The law makes no such distinction, Lady Zhao said. Then perhaps the law requires updating. Vincent met each council member's gaze in turn. We claim to be civilized. We claim to have evolved beyond simple predation. Yet the moment our secrecy is threatened, we resort to murder or enslavement. Where is the civilization in that? Where is the survival? Corvus shot back. One human child tells a teacher. The teacher tells authorities. Authorities investigate. Scientists get involved. Within months, we're hunted to extinction. Your compassion will kill us all. My compassion saved 2 lives and earned their loyalty. An 8-year-old child looks at me and sees a protector, not a monster. Her mother understands that I avenged the violence done to her by one of our kind. That kind of goodwill is worth far more than fear-based compliance. Goodwill is worthless if we're destroyed, Mercier said. Vincent changed tactics, addressing the practical concerns directly. The child's abuser has been compelled and is in human custody. He'll be convicted, sentenced, removed from society. The mother requires extended medical care for injuries sustained during years of domestic violence. Both are currently in my secure facility, surrounded by vampires loyal to House Thorne. They're not going to expose us, because doing so would destroy the only safety they've ever known. You're asking us to trust human gratitude? Corvus's laugh was bitter. Humans are self-interested creatures. When the fear fades and normalcy returns, they'll rationalize what they saw. They'll convince themselves it was trauma, hallucination, anything but the truth. And then they'll talk, not these humans. You cannot guarantee that. I can. Vincent straightened, making a decision that would change everything. I'll take full responsibility. If either Elena or Lily Reyes exposes our existence through negligence or malice, I'll submit to whatever punishment this council deems appropriate, including execution. Silence fell across the chamber. Marcus, watching from the shadows beyond the circle of torchlight, went very still. You would stake your existence onto humans? Lady Zhao asked softly. Your house, your territory, your immortal life all forfeit if they betray us? Yes. Corvus leaned forward, his ancient eyes gleaming. You care for them. Genuinely care. How? Unexpected. I made them a promise, Vincent said simply. I intend to keep it. The three council members exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, Corvus spoke. We will take your proposal under consideration. But understand this, Lord Thorne, if we accept your terms, you will be bound by blood oath. Break it, and you die, slowly, painfully. As an example to any other vampire who thinks sentiment outweighs security, I understand. The council will deliberate. You are dismissed. Vincent bowed formally and turned to leave. As he reached the bronze doors, Corvus's voice stopped him. One more thing, Lord Thorne. The child Lily, she intrigues me. So brave, so resourceful. If this arrangement fails, I claim her as thrall. She would make an excellent addition to my house. Vincent's hands clenched into fists, but he forced his voice to remain level. That won't be necessary, Lord Corvus. I won't fail. He walked out of the chamber before his control could slip. Marcus caught up with him in the antechamber. A blood oath. Vincent, are you insane? You just bet your life on two traumatized humans you've known for barely 24 hours. I know what I did. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you just signed your death warrant over a misplaced sense of obligation. Vincent stopped walking and turned to face his second. It's not misplaced. And it's not just obligation. That child texted a stranger and asked for help when she had nowhere else to turn. I will not let the council punish her for that courage. I won't let them turn her into Corvus's thrall. I won't. He stopped, the words catching in his throat. Marcus's expression softened slightly. You care about them. Actually care. Yes, Vincent admitted. I do. Against all logic and 3 centuries of learned caution, I care. Is that so terrible? It is if it gets you killed. Vincent resumed walking toward the exit. Then I'd better make sure these humans understand exactly what's at stake. Chapter 8. Blood Oath and Promise. Vincent returned to the facility just after 2 in the morning. He found Elena awake, sitting up in bed, despite the pain it clearly caused her. Staring at the door as if she'd been waiting for hours, Lily was curled on the sofa, asleep with Mr. Hopper, but her sleep looked restless, small twitches, quiet whimpers that spoke of nightmares. What happened? Elena asked immediately, her voice tight with fear. Vincent closed the door quietly and moved to the chair by her bed. He was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical fatigue and everything to do with the weight of the choice he'd just made. The Grand Council convened to discuss your situation, he began. Other vampire houses learned that you know what I am. They viewed you as a security threat. Elena's hand went to her throat. They want to kill us. They wanted to invoke an old law that would have given them several options, none of them pleasant. Compelled amnesia and forced relocation. Binding you into thrall service. Or elimination. The color drained from Elena's face. Oh God, Lily is safe, Vincent interrupted firmly. I negotiated an alternative. But Elena, you need to understand what I've agreed to. Because it affects both of you, he explained the blood oath, the terms he'd accepted. The consequences if either she or Lily exposed vampire existence to the outside world. He was brutally honest about what would happen to him if they betrayed his trust, the slow death, the example it would make, the destruction of his house. Elena listened in silence, tears streaming down her face. You bet your life on us, she whispered when he finished. Why? Why would you do that? Because Lily asked me for help, and I said yes. Because I failed you 3 months ago and owe you a debt. Because he stopped, searching for words to explain something he barely understood himself. Because in 347 years, I've forgotten what it feels like to protect something simply because it's worth protecting. You reminded me. I'm not worth your life, Vincent. Neither of us are. That's not your determination to make. Elena shook her head, wincing at the movement. What if we slip? What if Lily tells a friend at school? Or I mention something to a coworker without thinking? We'll get you killed. Then don't slip. Vincent leaned forward, his gaze intense. I'm not asking you to live in fear or silence. I'm asking you to be discreet. If Lily wants to talk about vampires, she can talk to me, or to you in private. If you need to process what you've learned, Dr. Okonkwo is cleared to know. But the outside world, teachers, neighbors, friends who aren't in the know, they can never learn the truth. How do we explain you? A strange man who suddenly appeared in our lives, paying our bills, providing medical care. We'll create a cover story. I'm a wealthy philanthropist who supports domestic violence survivors through a private foundation. You came to my attention through the medical system. It's close enough to the truth to be believable. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her fingers twisting the blanket. The vampire who attacked me 3 months ago, the one you killed. Did you do it to protect me, or to protect your secret? Vincent considered lying, then decided she deserved honesty. Both. He broke our most sacred law by feeding without consent. He endangered you and threatened our secrecy. But Elena, he made sure she was looking at him. I would have killed him for hurting you, even if the secrecy issue didn't exist. What he did was unforgivable by any standard, and now you're risking everything to protect us from your own people. Yes, that's insane, probably, despite everything. Elena laughed a small, broken sound. I don't understand you. You're supposed to be a monster. I am a monster. I've killed more people than you can imagine. I've done terrible things in service of survival, power, and ancient grudges. But I'm also trying to be something more than just a predator in the dark. Vincent glanced at Lily, still sleeping restlessly. Your daughter looked at me and saw someone who could help. I'd like to be worthy of that faith. Elena followed his gaze to Lily. She likes you. She told Dr. Okonkwo that you're scary but safe. Like a guard dog. She mentioned that comparison earlier. She's never trusted an adult man before. Not since. Elena's voice broke. He started hitting me when she was 3. She's spent most of her conscious life in a war zone. And now she trusts a vampire more than she ever trusted a human man. The weight of that trust settled on Vincent's shoulders like a physical burden. I won't betray it, he said quietly. I promise you that. You keep making promises that could get you killed, perhaps. But I keep them nevertheless. A soft sound from the sofa made them both turn. Lily had woken, her eyes finding Vincent immediately. You came back, she said, relief evident in her voice. I promised I would. She climbed off the sofa, Mr. Hopper, under her arm, and approached Vincent's chair with the careful deliberation of a child who'd made a decision. Mama told me about the blood oath, she said. I heard you talking. I wasn't trying to spy, but I woke up and I heard. Vincent and Elena exchanged glances. Elena began. I understand, Lily interrupted. We can't tell anyone you're a vampire. Not teachers or friends or anybody. Because if we do, the bad vampires will kill you. That's simplified, but essentially correct, Vincent said. Lily stood very straight, as if delivering a formal pronouncement. I promise I won't tell. I promise I'll be careful. I promise I won't get you killed. Sweetheart, you don't have to. I do, Lily insisted, looking at her mother. He saved us, Mama. He saved both of us. That means we owe him. That means we have to keep him safe too. Vincent felt something crack in his chest, some old, calcified defense he'd built over centuries of careful emotional distance. Lily, he said gently, you don't owe me anything. I helped because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected repayment. But that's what good people do, Lily said, with the absolute certainty of a child who'd figured out how the world should work. They help each other. You helped us. So now we help you. That's fair. Fair. Such a simple concept, yet one Vincent had almost forgotten in the Byzantine politics of vampire society. All right, he said quietly. Then we help each other. Deal? Lily considered this, then nodded solemnly, and held out her hand. Vincent shook it carefully, mindful of his strength, and felt the weight of one more promise settle into his bones. Elena watched them with tears in her eyes. So what happens now? Now you heal, Vincent said. You both stay here as long as necessary. Dr. Chen monitors your recovery. Dr. Okonkwo helps you process the trauma. And he paused, realizing he'd just committed to something far more complex than a simple rescue. I make sure you're safe. Not just tonight, but tomorrow, next week, next year. For as long as you need protection. That's a long time, Elena said softly. I have a long time. Lily yawned hugely, exhaustion finally overwhelming her adrenaline. Elena held out her arm, and Lily climbed carefully onto the bed, nestling into her mother's side. Will you stay, Lily? Asked Vincent, her eyes already closing. Just until we fall asleep? Vincent settled back in his chair. I'll stay. He watched them drift off together, mother and daughter, broken but healing, finding safety in each other and impossibly in him. Outside, dawn was approaching. Vincent could feel it in his bones, the pull toward rest, toward vulnerability. But he'd promised to stay, so he stayed, sitting vigil in the artificial daylight of an underground garden while two humans slept under his protection. Marcus would say he'd lost his mind. Corvus would say he'd grown soft. The council would say he'd forgotten what it meant to be a predator. They were probably all right, and Vincent found, to his surprise, that he didn't care. Chapter 9. Lessons in the dark. 3 days passed in the underground sanctuary. Elena's spleen stabilized, her ribs began to heal, and color slowly returned to her face. Lily explored every corner of the facility with characteristic curiosity, befriending nurses and asking endless questions about medical equipment, and Vincent stayed. Not constantly, he had house business that required his attention. Council meetings he couldn't avoid, territory patrols that demanded his presence. But he returned every evening, usually around 9, and remained until dawn pulled him toward rest. On the 4th night, he arrived to find Lily waiting by the courtyard garden, a notebook in her lap and questions already forming on her lips. You're early, she observed. Council meeting was cancelled. Lord Mercier had an emergency in his territory. Vincent settled onto the stone bench beside her. What are you working on? Homework. Mama called my school and explained I'd be out for a while. They're sending assignments. She held up the notebook, revealing math problems. Fractions. I hate fractions. May I? Vincent took the notebook and reviewed her work. You're dividing when you should be multiplying. Here he showed her the correct process, his explanation patient and clear. Lily worked through the next problem successfully, then looked up at him with those two perceptive eyes. Were you a teacher? Before you were a vampire? Before I was a vampire, I was a soldier. After I was turned, I spent several decades as a scholar. I've taught, yes, mathematics, philosophy, history, though not recently. Why not? I found other pursuits more pressing. Running a house, maintaining territory, enforcing laws. That sounds boring. Vincent's lips twitched. It has its moments. Lily finished another problem, then set down her pencil. Can I ask you about vampire stuff? Mama says I shouldn't bother you with questions, but I have so many. Ask. I promised you honesty. She took a breath, organizing her thoughts. You said you drink blood from donors who volunteer. But what if you can't find a donor? Do you get hungry like when humans skip meals? Similar. We call it the thirst. It grows stronger the longer we go without feeding. If ignored too long, it can overwhelm reason and control, like being hangry, but dangerous. Exactly like that. What happens if a vampire loses control? They're executed. By their house lord usually. We cannot afford rogues who hunt indiscriminately. Lily absorbed this soberly. Have you ever lost control? Vincent was quiet for a moment, deciding how much truth a child could handle. Once, 2 centuries ago, I was injured in a house war, trapped in a burning building for 3 days. By the time I escaped, the thirst had driven me nearly feral. I attacked the first human I encountered. Did you kill them? No, my second Marcus. You've seen him, he stopped me before I took too much. The human survived, though she carried scars. Vincent met Lily's eyes directly. I compelled her memories away and ensured she was compensated financially. But the guilt remains. It always will. You feel guilty even though it wasn't really your fault. You were hurt and starving. Intention doesn't erase consequence. I harmed an innocent person. That the circumstances were extreme doesn't change what I did. Lily considered this with the seriousness she brought to moral questions. Mama says people who hurt others always have excuses. She says what matters is if you try to do better next time. Your mother is wise. She's also scared, Lily said quietly. She tries to hide it, but I can tell. She's scared of the bad vampires, scared we'll mess up and get you killed, scared of everything. Fear is reasonable after what she's endured, but you're not scared. Why? Vincent smiled slightly. I'm 347 years old, Lily. I've survived plagues, wars, revolutions, and countless attempts on my existence. Fear becomes muted after a few centuries. That sounds lonely. The observation struck deeper than Vincent expected. It can be. Is that why you helped us? Because you were lonely? I helped you because you asked, and because it was right. The loneliness is, he paused, a separate issue. Lily studied him with that unnerving perception. Dr. Okonkwo says sometimes people push others away because they're scared of getting hurt. She says, my mama does that. I think maybe you do too. When did you become a therapist? I'm just observant. She picked up her pencil again, returning to fractions, as if they hadn't just discussed Vincent's emotional isolation. You know what I think? What do you think? I think you like having us here. I think you like teaching me math and talking to mama and having someone to protect. I think maybe you were lonely and didn't even know it. Vincent opened his mouth to deny it, then realized he couldn't. The past 4 days had been different, easier somehow. Coming to the facility each evening had become something he looked forward to rather than an obligation to fulfill. Perhaps you're right, he admitted. Lily smiled, a real smile this time, reaching her eyes. Mama says I'm too smart for my own good. Your mother is definitely wise. They work through the rest of the math problems together. Vincent explaining concepts while Lily absorbed information with impressive speed. When she finished, she set aside the homework and pulled out a different notebook, this one filled with drawings. I've been sketching the garden, she said, showing him pages of surprisingly detailed botanical illustrations. The nurse gave me colored pencils. Do you think these are good? Vincent examined the drawings carefully. They showed real talent, attention to detail, understanding of light and shadow, compositional balance beyond her years. These are excellent, he said honestly. Have you had formal training? No, I just like to draw. Mama can't afford art classes. An idea formed in Vincent's mind. Would you like lessons? I know several artists who could teach you properly. Lily's face lit up, then dimmed. We can't afford, I can. Consider it part of the arrangement. You're staying here under my protection anyway. What's the harm in adding art instruction to your education? Really? Hope warred with disbelief on her young face. Really? I'll arrange it tomorrow. Lily threw her arms around him in an impulsive hug. Vincent froze, uncertain, then carefully returned the embrace with a fraction of his strength. Thank you, she whispered into his shoulder. For everything. For saving us and staying and being nice and not being scary, even though you could be. Something in Vincent's chest, something he'd thought long dead, stirred painfully. You're welcome, he managed. Lily pulled back, grabbed her notebooks, and headed toward the suite. I'm going to tell Mama about the art lessons. She's going to be so excited. She disappeared through the door, leaving Vincent alone in the garden. Marcus materialized from the shadows, a habit of his, appearing when Vincent's defenses were down. You're getting attached, Marcus observed. Not for the first time. I'm fulfilling my obligations, Vincent. I've served you for 200 years. I know the difference between duty and affection. Marcus moved closer, his expression concerned. That child hugged you, and you let her. You, the vampire who hasn't willingly touched another being outside of combat or feeding in decades, let an 8-year-old human embrace you. Your point? My point is that you're building something here. A connection, a family almost. And when this arrangement ends, when they leave to build their new lives, it's going to hurt. Probably more than you're prepared for. Vincent stood, smoothing his coat. Then it hurts. I'll survive. I always do. Surviving isn't the same as living. I'm aware. Marcus sighed. The council has confirmed your blood oath. The ceremony is tomorrow night. Once it's done, you'll be bound. No going back. I don't want to go back. That's what worries me. Marcus turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Foolish, dangerous, possibly fatal, but right. That child and her mother deserve someone who'll fight for them. I'm glad it's you. He vanished back into the shadows, leaving Vincent alone with his thoughts and the weight of promises yet to be sealed in blood. Tomorrow, he would bind himself to 2 humans with an oath that could end his existence. Tonight, he would sit with them and pretend the future wasn't terrifying. It was. He reflected, the most human thing he'd done in centuries. Chapter 10. Bound by choice. The blood oath ceremony took place in House Thorne's private sanctum. deep beneath the financial district where Vincent's empire had its visible roots. Elena insisted on attending despite Dr. Chen's protests, and Lily refused to be left behind. So Vincent found himself standing in a circle of ancient ruins, with his entire house assembled as witnesses, while a traumatized waitress and her 8-year-old daughter watched from chairs. Marcus had thoughtfully provided the witness, an ancient vampire older than Vincent by several centuries, stood at the circle's center. Her name was Magistrate Althea, and she served as neutral arbiter for all blood oaths among the city's houses. Lord Vincent Thorne of House Thorne, she intoned, her voice resonating with power that made the air vibrate. You stand before your house and the eyes of the council to swear a blood oath. Do you enter this binding of your own free will? I do, Vincent said clearly. State the terms. Vincent had rehearsed this, had refined the wording with Marcus until every syllable was precise. Blood oaths were literal. Any ambiguity could create loopholes or unintended consequences. I swear by blood and bone, by the immortal essence that sustains me, that I will protect Elena Reyes and Lily Reyes from all harm for as long as they require my protection. I swear that should either of them expose vampire existence to the human world through malice or negligence, I will submit to execution by the Grand Council without resistance. I swear that this oath binds me until death, or until both parties release me from my obligation. This I swear on my true name, on my house, and on my immortal soul, if such a thing still exists. Magistrate Althea's eyes gleamed. The oath is heard and acknowledged. Do you accept the consequences of breaking this vow? I accept. Then seal it in blood. She produced a ceremonial blade obsidian, etched with runes that predated written language. Vincent took it without hesitation and drew it across his palm. Blood welled up, dark and rich, carrying the scent of old magic and older power. The magistrate took his hand and held it over a silver bowl, letting 3 drops fall. The blood hissed when it hit the metal, releasing smoke that smelled of copper and electricity. The oath is sealed, she declared. Let all present bear witness. Vincent Thorne has bound himself to mortal souls. Should he break this vow, his death is decreed. Should they betray his trust, his death is decreed. So it is sworn, so it shall be. The assembled vampires Marcus, the House Council, guards and administrators all responded in unison. So it shall be. Vincent felt the oath settle into his very essence, becoming part of his fundamental nature. It was like iron bands around his chest, like chains wrapped around his immortal soul. If Elena or Lily exposed vampire existence, he would die. Not metaphorically, literally. The magic would consume him from within, burning through his undead flesh until nothing remained but ash. He had just bet his eternal existence on 2 humans he'd known for less than a week. Marcus was right. He'd lost his mind, and he'd never been more certain of anything. The ceremony concluded with formal acknowledgments from House Thorne. The magistrate departed, her duty fulfilled. The assembled vampires dispersed, returning to their usual duties with the quiet efficiency of those who'd witnessed countless oaths over the centuries. Vincent found himself alone with Elena and Lily. His hands still bleeding sluggishly from the ceremonial cut, Elena approached slowly, her movements still careful around her healing ribs. That was terrifying, Vincent offered. I was going to say beautiful. In a dark, mystical, absolutely insane kind of way, she looked at his bleeding palm. Does it hurt? Not much. It'll heal in an hour. Lily had been uncharacteristically quiet during the ceremony, but now she spoke up. You really did it. You promised to protect us forever. Not forever, Vincent corrected gently. The oath expires when you no longer need my protection, or when you choose to release me from it. What if we never want to release you? Lily asked. The question hung in the air between them. Vincent crouched down to her level, making sure she understood. Then I'll be bound to you for the rest of your lives. 80 years, maybe 90. A blink of an eye for me. But your entire existence. That's not a burden I expect you to carry, Lily. But what if we want to? Elena said quietly. What if God? I can't believe I'm saying this. What if we want you in our lives? Not because we're scared or need protection, but because we care about you. Vincent looked between them, this broken family he'd stumbled into protecting. These humans who'd somehow slipped past 3 centuries of carefully maintained emotional distance. I would like that, he admitted. More than I can properly express. Elena smiled through tears. Then I guess we're stuck with each other, Mama, Lily said suddenly. Can we stay here? In the city, I mean? instead of getting new names and moving somewhere else? Elena looked to Vincent. Is that safe? Your people know we exist. The oath makes you untouchable, Vincent explained. Any vampire who harms you attacks House Thorne directly. And Corvus's interest in claiming Lily as thrall is nullified. She's under my explicit protection now. You're as safe here as anywhere. Then we stay, Elena decided. We build a new life here, together. Vincent felt something in his chest crack open, some ancient defense finally crumbling. I'll help however I can. A safe apartment, stable employment, whatever you need. What we need, Lily said firmly, is a friend. Everything else is just stuff. Out of the mouths of children, Vincent thought. Then you have one, he said. For as long as you want. Lily launched herself at him again, hugging him fiercely. This time Vincent didn't hesitate. He wrapped his arms around her small frame and held on, letting himself feel the warmth of human trust for the first time in longer than he could remember. Elena joined them, her arms encircling both Vincent and her daughter, creating a small circle of connection in the ancient vampire sanctum. Thank you, she whispered into Vincent's shoulder. For everything. For saving us, for protecting us, for caring when you didn't have to. Thank you, Vincent replied quietly. For reminding me why immortality might actually be worth living. They stood there for a long moment, vampire and humans, predator and prey, bound together by choice rather than compulsion. Outside, the city continued its eternal rhythm. The Grand Council plotted their political games. House Corvus nursed his wounded pride. The delicate balance of vampire society maintained itself through ancient laws and older fears, but in the sanctum of House Thorne, something new had taken root. Something fragile and unprecedented and possibly dangerous, a family built not from blood relation, but from deliberate choice. A vampire who'd remembered how to care. Humans who'd found safety in the most unlikely protector. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. My lord, there's a situation at the eastern border that requires your attention. Vincent nodded, gently extracting himself from the embrace. I'll handle it. Wait, Lily said. When will you be back? Tomorrow evening, I promise. She smiled, accepting this, and returned to her mother's side. As Vincent followed Marcus out of the sanctum, he heard Lily whisper to Elena, I told you he'd stay. Yes, you did, baby, Elena replied. Yes, you did. Vincent walked into the night, the blood oath singing in his veins, the weight of promises settling comfortably across his shoulders. 347 years old. And he'd finally found something worth protecting beyond simple survival. Two humans with trust in their eyes and hope in their hearts. A child who'd texted the wrong number and gotten a vampire instead. The best mistake either of them had ever made. 6 months. Laterth apartment. Vincent secured for them overlooked the river. 3 bedrooms, large windows, a kitchen that made Elena cry when she first saw it. Lily had her own room painted the exact shade of purple she'd requested, with an easel in the corner where she worked on the art lessons Vincent had arranged. Elena worked at one of House Thorne's legitimate businesses, a restaurant that paid fair wages, and asked no questions about her past. She was saving money, planning for college, for Lily, building a future that had seemed impossible 6 months ago, and Vincent visited. Not every day he had responsibilities, a house to run, vampire politics to navigate, but 3 or 4 times a week, he'd appear at their door with takeout food or books, or simply his presence. Tonight, he sat at their kitchen table helping Lily with algebra homework while Elena prepared dinner, and for the first time in centuries, Vincent understood what humans meant when they talked about home. It wasn't a place. It was the people who made you feel like you belonged. Vincent? Lily looked up from her equations. When I grow up, can I work for House Thorne? Help? People like you helped us? Vincent met Elena's eyes across the kitchen. She nodded slightly, giving permission. If that's what you want, he said carefully. But you have time to decide. Years and years. No rush. Good, Lily said, returning to her homework. Because I also want to be an artist. Maybe I can do both. Maybe you can. Vincent agreed. And as he sat in their warm kitchen, listening to Elena hum while she cooked and Lily mutter about polynomial expressions, Vincent realized that the blood oath binding him to these humans wasn't a burden at all. It was a gift, one he'd protect with every ounce of his immortal strength, for as long as they'd let him. The end.